This is East Asia Tonight.
Good evening, I'm Otelia Edwards. Tonight's top stories from East Asia. The heat wave gripping East Asia is intensifying. Japan is seeing thousands of heat stroke cases. South Korea has widened emergency alerts, and China's power grids are buckling under record demand. While Seoul's diplomacy is also facing headwinds, it says restarting talks with the North are realistically difficult, with its foreign minister taking the issue to Beijing later this month. Taiwan launches its biggest annual military drills with a focus on realism. Among the first this year, slower internet speeds to test the island's resilience. And Cathay Pacific posts a sharp jump in profits as passenger and cargo demand offset the impact of Mideast-driven higher fuel prices. Also tonight, why logistics giant DHL is raising its outlook amid geopolitical tensions, tariffs, and an uncertain global economy. Plus, a discarded SpaceX rocket piece slams into the moon in an unintentional collision that's expected to blast out a new lunar crater. Why this crash is drawing attention. Extreme heat continues to grip East Asia, with Japan, South Korea, and China struggling through another week of dangerously high temperatures. Across Japan, authorities say more than 9,000 people have been treated for heat stroke as the mercury hits up to 40 degrees Celsius in multiple locations this week. And more than 300 of these cases are in Kumamoto Prefecture, where about 44,000 households are still without running water after last week's powerful earthquake. And South Korea has widened its highest level heat wave alerts, with 43% of the greater Seoul area now under the emergency warning. President Lee Jae-myung has declared a national disaster after the extreme heat claimed at least 19 lives since May. Soaring temperatures driving electricity demand to record levels in China, placing growing pressure on power grids in several provinces. And authorities are working to ensure stable power supply as a prolonged heat wave boosts air conditioning use. Now, an approaching storm adding to all these challenges as Typhoon Dolphin barrels west across the Pacific, packing winds of up to 195 kilometers per hour. If the storm continues on its current trajectory, its outer circulation could funnel hot tropical air and humidity into the Korean peninsula, prolonging the heat wave in the region. Well, for more, let's go to our eyes and ears on the ground across East Asia. We've got senior correspondents Michio Ishida and Lim Yun-suk. They're in Tokyo and Seoul, and Tan Soo-hui is joining us from Beijing. Well, what's as unusual as this heat wave across the region is having you three, live on air at the same time. But I'm just going to go with you first, Michio. Let's talk about the heat in Japan. How has it been affecting recovery efforts in quick hit Kumamoto?
Well, let's start with Tokyo. Temperature in the capital has not been so high the past few days, but many here are fatigued, including animals, as since July there were many days above 35 degrees. We heard 3 lions in Tokyo's Tamazu died on the 28th and 31st of July and on the 2nd of August, despite care given indoors. There were in total 16 lions and 10 showed signs of fatigue. And chickens cannot handle extreme heat, and there are farmers supplying them with ice-cold water, otherwise they would die. And those surviving laid eggs smaller than the average. From this April, Japan Meteorological Agency introduced the term kokushobi, meaning a cruelly hot day for over 40 degrees. Japan experienced 5 consecutive days of kokushobi in July. And in Kumamoto, hit by the magnitude 7.1 earthquake a week ago, experienced kokushobi for the first time on Monday. And this Wednesday, temperature rose to about 39. This as over 14,000 homes have been damaged. Power is back for homes that are standing, according to local reports. Still over 7,700 are staying in evacuation shelters. The government is delivering portable air conditioners mainly to school gymnasiums and public facilities. Before the quake, only 21% of school gymnasiums in Kumamoto had air conditioning. Then there are those who chose to stay in their cars just outside their damaged homes to keep their eyes on possible thefts. There was a case of a woman who ran out of gasoline, meaning her air conditioner was cut off in her car and died due to a heat stroke. And every day it's reported dozens seek medical treatment due to heat stroke in Kumamoto. And finally, a week after the quake, Kumamoto Prefecture announced 100 hotels and inns that would accept evacuees. And a powerful typhoon Dolphin is currently lashing strong wind and rain south of Japan, heading towards Okinawa. And the most worrying is to what extent the typhoon might affect Kumamoto, with thousands of homes damaged and utilities not restored yet.
Yeah, still lots of challenges ahead. Well, let's turn to South Korea now. And Yoon Suk, your president declared a national emergency yesterday. People, animals, I mean, how are they coping with the heat?
Well, definitely, this is one of the worst heat wave on record, and the South Korean government has now declared this an emergency. But you know, it was 3 days ago that the South Korean government activated its second highest disaster response level, and something that's only happened one other time since heat waves were officially classified as a natural disaster here back in 2018. Now, officials here did brief President DJ Myung on how their response is going on, and the numbers are alarming. And we have nearly 2,000 people who have gotten sick from this heat since May. And as you said, 19 people have died and hundreds of thousands of farm animals and fish have also died too. Now, that emergency status means that the South Korean government is now pouring in money and people. There are senior officials who have been sent to personally oversee the response in Seoul and also the hardest hit southern region. Also, millions of dollars in emergency funding is going toward the drought relief because there are reservoirs that farmers depend on and they are running dry too. Now, the Interior Minister has been visiting the public cooling centers, free air conditioning spaces that cities have set up, mostly for the elderly Koreans who don't have air conditioning at home, and they're checking on the emergency water supplies as well too. Now, the heat is affecting everyday life here. You have professional baseball games that have been canceled after fans, went into cardiac arrest and they were collapsing during one of the games. And people are doing all they can to stay cool. And that means trying to find areas and places that are the coolest right now across South Korea. And one of them is this place called Gwangmyeong Cave just outside of Seoul. It's an old mine that was built in 1912, and it was turned into a tourist attraction. Now, while temperatures are hovering around the high 30s in most parts of the country, this underground cave stays steady at around 12 degrees Celsius, no matter how hot it gets outside. And so thousands of people, a day have been going there, and also other similar places too, as South Koreans are just really trying to find different ways to escape this heat.
That's really unusual, finding relief in the cave. I mean, who would have thought of that? So let's turn to the situation in China. I mean, we know a lot of people are turning to air conditioning now, driving up electricity demand. But what other sort of measures have been taken to beat the heat?
Well, we're expecting high temperatures over the next 10 days, especially in northwest China, like Xinjiang. It could exceed temperatures of 40 degrees Celsius. Already parts of northeast China, like Liaoning, as well as Jilin, and eastern China, Shandong province, they could break historical records. In July, we already saw the record high temperature of this year. That was 50 degrees Celsius in Xinjiang, and that has led to a record high of power demand earlier this week. People like myself in the northern part of China, here in Beijing, we come to the office, we switch on the aircon, we go home, we sleep with the aircon on. So that has really driven electricity demands. And so the state grid is going to optimize, it's going to improve grid operations. It's also going to prepare for cross-regional power supply. And this will really be a true test of investments in renewable energy in China, or whether China still has to rely heavily on coal. Now, on social media, I've seen a lot of videos on how people are trying to stay cool. Local authorities also stepping up measures. We saw in Chongqing and Sichuan, they're opening up train stations to allow people to lay out their mats and to really cool in the air conditioning. Also in Nanjing, they're going to open up air raid shelters, bomb shelters, just like in South Korea. You hear about the cave, just like what Yoon Suk had talked about. But this one, in the air raid shelter, there's free Wi-Fi, there's toilets, there's also movies to watch. Tourists are also looking for more mountainous regions to tour, like Zhangjiajie National Park, where there are mountains and they can cool off over there. Local authorities also trying to protect agricultural produce by controlling, for example, water conditions so that the fishes would not die. And with Typhoon Dolphin potentially hitting eastern China, this could ease temperatures temporarily, but this would increase humidity and this would make it a lot more significantly hotter over at eastern China.
Well, people are definitely getting creative in terms of ways to stay cool. Well, thank you so very much, ladies, for your insights there. We've got Tan Si-hui in Beijing, as well as senior correspondents Michio Ishida and Lin Yoon-suk in Tokyo and Seoul, respectively. Well, on that note, we are going to go for a short break now, but coming up on East Asia tonight, Taiwanese contract electronics manufacturer Foxconn posts record July revenue with no let-up in demand for AI products. Plus, shares of high-tech equipment makers in China tumble amid reports of a possible U.S. import ban. Hello again. You are watching East Asia tonight, and you're just in time for business news with Roland. So, Roland, Cathay Pacific, apparently they have posted its best first half earnings since 2010, but apparently management is warning of headwinds. What's up with that?
Right, yeah, the escalating Middle East tensions, raising jet fuel prices again. Cathay said that jet fuel costs almost doubled in the second quarter as compared to the first, and expects it to be elevated for the rest of the year. Still, the Hong Kong carrier says it remains cautiously optimistic, despite warning that higher jet fuel prices are likely to persist. For now, it's cheering strong passenger and cargo demand that have helped it log its best first-half profit in 16 years. Now, Cathay recorded the net profit of nearly $798 million in the 6 months to June, and that was up 70% from a year ago, and was the second highest first-half profit in the airline's history. Revenue climbed more than 25%. The group cited strong AI-related cargo demand and a 17.4% surge in passenger numbers as more travelers flew through Asia to avoid the Middle East. The results were also boosted by a one-time gain linked to Cathay's dilution stake in Air China. But higher fuel prices remains a major challenge. Now, Cathay says its jet fuel costs nearly doubled in the second quarter as compared to the first 3 months of the year, although fuel surcharges helped offset some of the increase. Cathay Pacific shares in Hong Kong closing nearly 3% higher today, and the stock is up about 17% this year. Taiwanese electronics giant Foxconn has reported a sharp rise in monthly revenues as demand for artificial intelligence infrastructure remains strong. The company says the July revenue jumped more than 54% on year to $29.3 billion. That's a record high for the firm. Foxconn, formerly known as Han Hai, had already posted a stronger than expected near 40% increase in revenue for the April to June period this year. The company assembles AI servers fitted with NVIDIA chips and expects shipments of its server racks to maintain momentum this quarter. Major tech firms, including Alphabet, Meta, Microsoft, and Amazon, have committed trillions of dollars to AI data center investments. Yet concerns remain over whether that spending will deliver sufficient returns. And Foxconn shares in Taiwan closed about 3.4% higher before the revenue data was released, although the stock has fallen roughly some 16% from its June peak amid a broad tech sell-off. Honda Motor has raised its full-year forecast and posted its first quarterly profit rise in 6 quarters, boosted by a weaker yen and the absence of U.S. tariff-related costs that have weighed on earnings a year ago. Operating profit in the April to June quarter more than doubled to $3.3 billion. Net sales rose some 14% to around $37 billion. The results come after the struggling automaker posted its first annual loss in nearly 70 years in May, hit by more than $99 billion in costs to restructure its electric vehicle business. Now, Honda said it did not book any restructuring-related charges in the first quarter, adding that negotiations with suppliers affected by the overhaul, many of them in North America, were still ongoing. It said it expected to face a higher-than-expected extra restructuring cost of some $3.2 billion this business year. Still, it still expects a stronger year. It has raised its full-year operating profit forecast by 30% to about $4.1 billion, citing a more favorable exchange rate. It also upgraded its revenue and net profit outlook. China's artificial intelligence hardware stocks are slumping after reports that the Trump administration is drafting a ban on U.S. imports of new Chinese-made data center components. Mainland Chinese shares of Zhongqi Enolite and Eoptolink sharply down. The broader CSI 300 telecommunications sector index also fell by as much as 9% before paring the gains to about 3.5% lower. The two companies have been among the biggest winners from China's AI boom, supplying equipment for data center expansion in both the US and China. They also generate most of their revenue from overseas customers. Zhongqi Enolite generated some 62% of its revenue from the US in the first quarter, while Eoptolink, well, they generate some 96% of their sales from overseas markets. Major US tech firms, including Amazon and Alphabet, buy their optical transceivers and other equipment used in AI data centers. And the proposed ban is threatening an already fragile investor confidence in China's AI hardware sector, following a sharp sell-off. China stocks rose, though, to a one-week high as surges in chip-making shares offset slumps in optical module stocks. Sentiment also aided by a rally in global equities as Middle East tensions eased again. Shanghai Composite ending the day 1.5% higher. Shenzhen second bourse did better, 1.9 in the green. Hang Seng Index also staying above water. Bubble tea chain Gongcha is getting a new owner with ambitions to make an even bigger splash in the US. American private equity firm Bain Capital is buying the bubble tea brand for more than $635 million, betting that the chain's success in Asia can be replicated in America. Founded in Taiwan in 2006, Gongcha now operates more than 2,000 stores across 30 markets. Japan is expected to be Gongcha's biggest market by revenue this year. Bain Capital plans to build on that success by expanding the brand in the US, where bubble tea has become increasingly mainstream. The investment firm has experienced growing restaurant brands, including Domino's Pizza Japan. Bain plans to tap its expertise in digital marketing and franchising to grow the business, highlighting the rising global appeal of Asian food and beverage brands. Research firms forecast the global tea cafe market will grow nearly 30% to about $74 billion by 2030. The world's leading logistics firm, DHL Group, says strong industrial demand and a 10% rise in shipment weight helped drive its second quarter earnings well above expectations. The logistics giant also raised its full-year profit guidance. Now, speaking to CNA, CEO Tobias Meyer says that DHL enters the second half with strong momentum, but remains cautious over the Middle East conflict, US tariffs, and tighter European e-commerce rules.
So we roughly have now an outlook for the full year that is double what we had in the first half, which remains, I think, conservative. We have typically a stronger fourth quarter. We have the peak season, the pre-Christmas time, where in our light package business there's a particular strong demand. But we also still have macroeconomic factors, the situation in the Middle East, tariffs in the United States, but also in Europe as it relates to e-commerce. So those are factors that we balance. Overall, really good momentum in the second quarter. So based on what we see on the customer side, we are very optimistic.
The Middle East conflict, though, that's increased fuel, insurance, rerouting costs for yourselves. But it's also tightened air freight capacity and supported your pricing. Quantify for us the net effect of that conflict. Was it ultimately positive or negative for second quarter earnings? So within the quarter, we had indeed quite big swing factors. If you look at our top line, especially at DHL Express, this being a business that has significant exposure to aviation and thereby the price of fossil fuels, you see an impact on the top line, roughly 10% in that division. So it has a meaningful impact on our customers as well, who have to bear these additional costs. And again, that is one of the factors that makes us cautious as it relates to some of the developments in the second half. But when it comes to the bottom line, we pass on those additional costs, and we have been able to really flex and manage our global networks very well. Does the war risk premium prevail, though? I mean, we have Gulf air capacity that's recovered substantially, but the network remains vulnerable to renewed escalation. So are your freight rates and surcharges now normalizing, or should customers expect a longer-lasting geopolitical risk premium, especially on the Asia to Europe trade? So as it relates to fuel, but also those risk surcharges that you managed, we have a strict policy at DHL that we pass through additional cost, but we try to have that really as a cost recovery mechanism. What some of our customers don't recognize when it comes to those risk premiums, that the insurance of aircraft, for instance, is a significant factor. We saw that into Israel now, since that conflict is going on, and that was sometimes higher than the operating cost of the aircraft, those additional insurance costs. So that's why risk premiums are justified. But similar to fuel, it is a cost recovery mechanism. We make our money on the good service, on the base rates, and that's what we want to continue to do. What about U.S. tariffs, including the recent Section 301 changes? Has that lowered trade or just redirected it, say, from China to Southeast Asia, India, and other markets? What are you seeing with the new trade corridors? So we indeed continue to see our customers diversifying their global manufacturing footprint. That's also Chinese manufacturers who used to or started over the last decade to distribute their products globally and now are really distributing also their manufacturing footprint to hedge themselves against geopolitical volatility, including tariffs. As relates to the United States, we now have the second quarter, the first quarter that year on year did not have a significant impact from incremental tariffs. Most tariffs coming into place in February, March, and April of last year, of 2025. So now that's cycled out on an annual basis. We have the replacement of the 122, Section 122 tariffs with the 301s, but it largely sustains the same level of tariffs, and that's what customers and also consumers in the United States have gotten used to. So not a significant change from that perspective. However, on the European side, a change in the de minimis regulation for e-commerce that will have some effect in now the third quarter. So that's one of those risk factors that we still weigh when we look at the full year. We turn our attention now to Asian currencies. The South Korean won staying firm against the greenback amid reports of government intervention to strengthen the currency in tandem with Japan's currency intervention measures. The speculation follows the won's performance last Thursday, strengthening to its highest against the dollar since October last year, the same day which Japan conducted a yen buying intervention. Analysts suggest the move could reflect South Korea's limited foreign exchange reserves, with coordination alongside Japan potentially strengthening the impact of their intervention efforts. Other reports say South Korea's trade deficit with the US as a reason behind the currency intervention. According to the American government's data, last year's deficit stood at some $56.4 billion US dollars, which doubled in size over a decade. Market watchers say that chipmaker SK Hynix's NASDAQ listing last month is also believed to have prompted the intervention. The company said it would convert $26.5 billion US dollars raised into won in order to fund factory construction and other projects in South Korea. The sizable currency conversion is believed to have supported the won. And the yen's rally following the historic US-Japan intervention has lost momentum, ending its best four-day run in 2 years. It is currently hovering around the 158 per dollar level in Asian session after data showed that real wages in Japan grew for a 6th straight month. The yen earlier showed little reaction even after U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said in an interview with CNBC that the U.S. would do whatever it takes to support Japan. He warned that a weaker yen risks wider economic problems and could trigger broader depreciations in Asian currencies. The Treasury chief, though, did not discuss the mechanics of U.S. participation in the joint market action. The intervention also does not appear to have extended into a third day. Analysis of Bank of Japan accounts showed that no major increase in funds moving through the banking system, suggesting that Japan did not launch another large-scale yen buying intervention on Monday. Traders are now focused on whether the yen can strengthen towards 155 per dollar. That's a threshold strategists view as a crucial test for the rally's staying power. Remember, Japan's previous interventions in April and May only briefly pushed the dollar-yen towards that level. And that's all for your business update at this hour. Otelli.
Thanks so very much for that, Roland. Right, we're going to go for another break now, but coming up on East Asia tonight, Taiwan begins its largest annual military drills, ditching scripted scenarios for more realistic, unpredictable exercises. And North Korea signals a strong response to Japan's military buildup, accusing its neighbor of transforming its forces into one that's capable of preemptive strikes. This is East Asia tonight, and here are the headlines we're following. Extreme heat continues to grip East Asia. Japan's heat stroke cases surge. South Korea widens emergency alerts. And China's power grid under strain from record demand. Hong Kong flag carrier Cathay Pacific reports a 70% surge in first half net profits, rising passenger demand offsetting heightened fuel costs. And Taiwan begins its largest annual military drills with a focus on realism, testing its troops' response to unscripted exercises. Now, South Korean Foreign Minister Cho Hyun says that restarting multilateral talks with North Korea are realistically difficult ahead of his meeting with top Chinese diplomat Wang Yi later this month. Now, Mr. Cho also revealed that Pyongyang rejected Indonesia's bid to broker talks between the two Koreas.
북한 관련해서 이번에 왕이 부장이 방한하게 되면은 분명히 논의를 하게 될 겁니다. 그러나 그것도 현재로서는 어떤 그 중국이 어떤 큰 변화를 가지고 카드로 와서 우리한테 밝히고 뭐 이럴 것까지는 기대하기 곤란한 것이 아닌가.
The Yi administration has sought to reduce tensions since taking office, switching off anti-North loudspeakers along the border, barring activists from sending propaganda leaflets, and expressing regret over private drone incursions. But Pyongyang has ignored or rebuffed Seoul's overtures, instead adopting an increasingly hostile posture that includes formally designating the South as its primary and most hostile adversary. Now, Mr. Yi has stressed that the South will continue seeking dialogue. The Unification Ministry says it will resume work on a railway section near the demilitarized zone that could eventually reconnect the South's rail network with the North Korean city of Wonsan. The Gyeongwon Line project was launched in 2015, but was suspended a year later due to worsening ties. Well, North Korea warns that it will adopt fresh military options in response to what it sees as a potential threat from Japan's expanding strike capabilities. Kim Yo-jong, the sister of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, accused Tokyo of moving its armed forces beyond a defensive posture into one that's capable of preemptive attacks and overseas operations. Ms. Kim says Japan is transforming itself into a military power, citing its participation in U.S.-led drills in the Philippines in May and a recent test firing of a U.S.-made long-range Tomahawk cruise missile as evidence. She also accused the U.S. of enabling Japan's military buildup, saying Pyongyang should make Tokyo regret the dangerous moves. Well, Japan, in its defense white paper released yesterday, included North Korea as part of growing regional threats that also has Russia and China among the countries listed. The paper, which also described Beijing's military activities as Japan's greatest strategic challenge, has been dismissed by China as, quote, filled with false narratives. A Chinese defense spokesperson says that Tokyo is using security concerns as a pretext to ease restrictions on its own military buildup. Taiwan has launched the 2026 Han Kuang military drills. That's the island's biggest war games of the year. Unscripted, this 42nd edition will be focused on keeping it realistic, with moves to counter changes in China's strategy towards reunification with Taiwan. CNA senior correspondent Victoria Jen with the details from Taipei.
The word for this year's Han Kuang Exercise is realism. On the main island, you've got real troops in the field, but no live fire. There's no script, no fixed timeline. The commanders don't know what's coming next. They have to react as it happens, and that's the whole point. Now, one of the most striking parts is out east. Troops are landing again on Lanyu or Orchard Island and Green Island, two small islands off the southeastern coast. And on Lanyu, that's the first time in decades. So why does it matter? It's about keeping them out of China's hands. Because if Beijing ever took those islands, it could use them as bases, launch pads for helicopters and drones, aimed right at eastern Taiwan. And eastern Taiwan is home to some of the island's strategic assets located in Hualien and Taidong County. There's a big change in manpowers, too. For the first time, Taiwan is calling up two full reserve brigades, one in the north, one in the south. That's around 5,000 reservists, all in the 14 days. And that's the hard part. Now, these units usually run on a skeleton crew, so getting them battle ready on the clock is a real test. Now, this year, ordinary people will feel it too. For the first time, they're slowing down the mobile network. So for 30 minutes, phone signals will drop on purpose during the air raid drills. Mobile pay may not work, and browsing speeds could come to a crawl. So the public is urged to carry a credit card with them when it happens. Maybe some cash too, just in case. And there's more that's new. Taiwan's new tanks, the American-made M1A2T, joined Han Kuang for the very first time. And embedded reporters, journalists will ride along with frontline troops. The idea is simple: to see how fast the military can get the real story out in a crisis and get Taiwan's side to the world in any attempt to seize the narrative. Victoria Jen, CNA, Taipei.
Iran-backed Houthi militants have claimed a missile attack on a Saudi oil tanker in the Red Sea. Now, the Houthis are enforcing their de facto blockades over the waterway, repeatedly targeting ships transiting near Yemen. And this incident comes after an Indian-flagged commercial ship sank off the Yemen port city of Hodeidah after reportedly being struck by an explosive-laden boat in the Red Sea. Yemen's Coast Guard rescued the crew, which included 13 Indians and a Yemeni. The Indian Foreign Ministry has condemned the attack, though no one has claimed responsibility. Meantime, efforts to reopen the Strait of Hormuz are ongoing. Iranian Foreign Ministry says talks with Oman are focusing on establishing safe shipping routes while protecting both countries' national security interests. He adds that negotiations have been received well at both political and technical levels. U.S. President Donald Trump told Fox News discussions with Tehran were positive and that a deal could be reached as early as tomorrow. He also warned Iran would be hit very hard unless the strait is reopened very soon. Qatar also says it has made progress in mediating the conflict. Mr. Trump and Qatar's emir have spoken over the phone to discuss ways to narrow differences between Washington and Tehran and improve prospects for a lasting settlement. Now, India has distanced itself from former Bangladeshi leader Sheikh Hasina's planned press conference. India's foreign ministry says that the event is organized by a private media entity and has no government backing.
The government has no involvement whatsoever in it. Neither does it endorse any views that may be expressed at the forum.
Hasina is due to speak by video link later today in New Delhi at an event hosted by the Foreign Correspondents Club of South Asia. Now, she's been living in a self-imposed exile in India since student-led protests toppled her government back in 2024. It could be her first public appearance since fleeing Dhaka. But experts say she is likely to deliver audio comments. Now, Michael Kugelman from the Atlantic Council told us what Sheikh Hasina's address could mean for ties between India and Bangladesh.
India's government would have the capacity in principle to use technology that makes it impossible for Hasina's speech to be heard. The other thing is that Hasina's party, the Awami League, has been banned from political activities. This was a move made by the previous Bangladesh government to ban her party. So that essentially means, from Bangladesh's perspective, that by giving this virtual speech, India's government, even if indirectly, is providing a platform for an illegal entity to make political statements. The mere fact that she'll be able to be heard publicly is something that Bangladesh simply will not support and will not want to stand for. And this is why Bangladesh's government has sought to get more clarification as to what exactly India's stance is on this issue. I think that the new government in Bangladesh, the new Prime Minister, Tariq Rahman, is in a bit of a tough spot. And his government is going to have to be very cautious about how it goes about this relationship with India. And that's the case regardless of whether Hasina was going to make this speech in India or not. First of all, there is very strong sentiment that is hostile to Hasina inside Bangladesh, certainly in terms of much of the public, as well as two of the key opposition parties, the Jamaat-e-Islami Party, as well as a newer party, the NCP, which is made up of leaders of the protests that ousted Sheikh Hasina in 2024. So Tariq Rahman knows that he has to be very careful about signaling any type of intent to reach out to India. But at the same time, I think that this new government in Bangladesh has signaled that it wants to try to do what it can to make the relationship more stable and more manageable. India is a key partner of Bangladesh historically. It's been a pretty significant source of economic assistance, among other things. So I think that that Rahman will have to be very cautious about how he goes about trying to repair this relationship.
Well, today marks 2 years since Sheikh Hasina's fall from power. What started as a student protest over government job quotas turned into a nationwide revolt that forced Bangladesh's longest-serving prime minister to resign and flee. Now, here's a look at how it all unfolded. The protests began in June 2024 before gathering momentum in July as students looked to the streets nationwide. They were protesting against the Bangladesh's High Court's decision to reinstate a controversial job quota. Now, that quota reserved 30% of civil service jobs for descendants of veterans of the 1971 Independence War. The students denounced what they saw as an unfair system, and their demands soon expanded beyond quota reform to calls for accountability and political change. Bangladesh's Supreme Court then largely overturned the quota ruling, but the movement had already evolved into a full-blown uprising. Police fired tear gas, rubber bullets and live round. Hundreds were killed in weeks of unrest. But Hasina doubled down, branding some protesters with an inflammatory label associated with collaborators during Bangladesh's 1971 independence war. A mounting public pressure forced Hasina to step down on August 5th, 2024, where she fled to India, where she has remained in exile ever since. Right, on that note, we are going to go for a short break now, but coming up next, why a discarded SpaceX rocket crashing into the moon is drawing scrutiny. The Japanese government has approved Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's plan to cut taxes on food to help households cope with rising living costs. Well, if approved by Parliament, the proposal would trim Japan's consumption tax on food from 8% to just 1% for 2 years, starting in April next year. The plan would mark the first reduction in Japan's sales tax since it was introduced in 1989. The move, however, is expected to leave a revenue gap of about $31 billion. The government says it will not borrow to cover the shortfall. Instead, it plans to use non-tax revenue, including returns from state funds and foreign reserves. The proposal comes as Japan faces growing fiscal pressure, with higher spending commitments on investment and defense expected in the years ahead. Well, it's been almost 8 months since Australia enacted a landmark law that bans those under 16 from using social media. And in Malaysia, it's been about 3 months. But just how effective have the measures really been in keeping teens safe online? Well, on this week's Talking Point, host Diana Sir travels to both countries to find out how teenagers and their families are adapting. Here's an extract.
Many countries actually are adopting a wait and watch attitude. So why has Malaysia decided to bite the bullet, so to speak?
I think we have enough evidence to tell us that children are being harmed, and are saying that oftentimes cases of abuse initiated from contact through social media. And even what people are saying now is not so much the issue of whether children should be accessing social media, but whether social media platforms are allowed to access children.
It sounds like Malaysia has decided to do something about it because you feel that social media companies aren't doing enough. Can I say that?
Yes, we believe so. And it's not just about Malaysia that's facing this issue, it's also global scale. You know, I want to be clear. We are after the people who are committing crimes and taking advantage of platforms. We're not painting out platforms to be the enemy. We want to work with them. We want to hold them on a higher level of accountability and responsibility, yes, for sure.
Well, for some teens, social media isn't just about connecting with friends online. Here's what one teen influencer had to say about the ban.
Okay, so first we're going to be showing this product because this is the product we are promoting. And then you can do some ASMR, like that.
Okay.
You just have to swatch the cream. And then apply it on your hand. And then you just show it like that.
Cut now?
Yeah. Okay, cut. Got me.
I feel very accomplished. Do you get paid for this?
Some company, they will pay you for making videos. There was this product that was like for your dark spots, and that video got me about 900 ringgit.
What is the age group of your followers?
13 to 18.
How long did it take for you to reach almost 20,000 followers on TikTok?
I started since August 2024. It grew because one of my videos going viral.
What do you think of Malaysia's move to not allow below 16-year-olds like yourself to not have their own social media account?
So what I know is that they are having this team where they look out to accounts that's under 16 to have them like permanently banned. For myself, I feel really worried for my account. That time when it was announced, I was at this school camp. So everyone stay up until midnight and they'll look at their social media like, oh my god, my social media is gonna get banned.
How does that make you feel? I mean, you've worked on this for 2 years.
Upset.
Yeah?
Yeah. Because most of the followers are under 16, right? Suddenly, half of your people are gone. it will be harder for people to reach out to you and really, really hard to get followers in the future. It's unfair. I personally think that it should be allowed for like 13 plus.
Well, one study found more than 8 in 10 teens in Australia are still on social media despite the ban. Diana Sir headed to Australia to find out why some believe tech giants need to do more to keep children safe online.
A lot of the kids have made their way back onto the platform, and you hear these comments from some parents. Oh, the kids are smart. You're right, kids are smart. Kids are incredibly tech savvy today, but I can assure you that there is nobody smarter than these tech companies, these social media companies. They know how old your child is. They can count the birthday candles on the cake. They can determine what you are watching on there. These companies, if they wanted the kids off the platform, the children would be off the platform. And the fact that all these kids are still on the platform today shows me that they are not doing enough.
Well, if this piques your interest and you want to find out more, you can catch this week's Talking Point tomorrow at 9:30 p.m. on MediaCorp's Channel 5, or stream it online on CNA Video On Demand, MeWatch, or CNA Insider's YouTube channel. A discarded SpaceX rocket has smashed into the moon. While the impact poses no danger to Earth, it gives scientists a unique chance to study the lunar surface. Well, the path to this unintended collision began in January last year when a Falcon 9 rocket launched 2 lunar landers to the moon. And after releasing them, the rocket's upper stage was meant to head into a disposal orbit. But it didn't have enough fuel. The 4-ton cylinder remained in a drifting orbit for more than a year that eventually sent it towards the moon. Well, the rocket part is estimated to be traveling at about 8,700 kilometers an hour at the point of impact. That's about 7 times the speed of sound. The crash is expected to form a crater 20 to 30 meters wide and 5 meters deep. Well, astronomers in parts of North and South America are said to be best positioned to observe the aftermath through telescopes. In fact, this isn't the first impact on the moon. Spacecraft have been deliberately crashed into the moon before for scientific research. But this will be only the second known accidental rocket impact after a discarded Chinese rocket stage struck the moon's far side back in 2022. Now, the latest impact is expected to help researchers better understand the lunar surface, how moon dust behaves, and how to better protect future astronauts and lunar missions. This rare event is also a reminder of the growing challenge of space junk. As more missions head beyond Earth, scientists say better planning is needed to ensure today's spacecraft don't become tomorrow's hazard. That wraps up Wednesday's edition of East Asia Tonight. Don't forget your headlines anytime at cna.asia. And find us on our socials, including Facebook and YouTube. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again tomorrow.